Good morning and welcome to the 18th in our Shift, Sustain, and Succeed series. This is the 11th week of helping you find the answers to the most pressing questions that our businesses have in navigating the COVID-19 situation. Even businesses who were very prepared to face this crisis in early March have experienced challenges that they couldn't see coming. We've all learned new terms and phrases, some that we don't even really understand. Once you read any business news about the pandemic, and you are surely to hear the words supply chain disruption. It may seem like a big business problem, but in fact, it can be a deal breaker for even the smallest of businesses. So today we're going to help you gain a better understanding of supply chain, what it means to any business or organization, and maybe how you can have some control over that. Today's guest is David Carroll. He is a thought leader with Reveal USA, Inc., and is an accomplished SAP professional. So we may let him explain what SAP is here at some point. Like me, you've probably heard the term supply chain thrown around in recent months, and it often does have that word disruption attached. So today we're fortunate to have David. He resides in Franklin, but he travels extensively under normal circumstances. He's available and willing to share why understanding supply chain and challenges and opportunities should matter to all of us. So as everything continues to evolve more now than ever, I want to remind everyone that what we share today is based on the information we know today. We'll do our best to update and bring you current information as things change. So if you have additional questions, please submit them in the Zoom chat. We'll do our best to include them or to follow up. And a reminder that we are recording today. So if you need to come back and review or you want to share this with someone, you can do that. So with that, David, welcome. Glad to see you this morning. So we'll go ahead and get started because, as you said, this is really quick. We've got a lot to talk about this morning. So can you tell us, what is supply chain? What does that mean?
Wow. Well, in layman's terms, it's basically a series of steps that are involved in getting a product or a service to an end customer. Okay, but there are steps included within that. Okay, transforming raw materials into finished products, transporting those products, distributing them from an end-to-end perspective to the actual user. And there's lots of entities involved. There are manufacturers, producers, vendors, warehouses, transportation companies, distribution centers, and retailers. So, it's a very complex set of steps to get what you take for granted from a shelf.
And can you tell us a little bit about some of the systems that are used in small business? You might want to touch very briefly on SAP. Some of us have heard that because we maybe have a friend or someone that's managed SAP. We hear about it in larger businesses, but can you tell us what SAP is and what might be the systems that are used in a smaller scale business?
Absolutely. So SAP is the #1 selling software in the world apart from Microsoft Office. Nobody's ever heard of it. It's basically a German system that is known as an enterprise resource planning system, and basically encompasses every aspect of a business from the moment you take an order all the way through to the moment that you distribute it. And it's the idea behind it basically is to have a series of information that everybody can use to be able to become efficient. A lot of companies run it here. The Joy, I was going to say the Joy, it's not the Joy anymore, is it? No. They use SAP. All the Fortune 500 companies use SAP, but from a small business perspective, the whole idea around having a system is where we should be. Okay, you can't take lots of information systems, personal information systems, and try and run a business. You need one system of record. So whether you're a Fortune 500 or you're a retailer on Franklin High Street, it's always good to have one system of record that you can all refer to. And there are some really good little ones out there. Microsoft Dynamics is a really good, what we call small business ERP system. There's another one called Priority. SAP has its own very small version called SAP Business One. And there's another company out there called Oracle who do something called NetSuite. So, but large or small, the idea is as a business, you really do need something from a systematic perspective to manage every aspect. Even if it's just you're buying something and you're selling something, you still need to record those transactions.
So in consideration of small businesses like why is it important? What are some of the things that can go wrong or might not work well when small businesses don't have a system in place?
Well, silly little things like we buy too much inventory because we don't know what inventory we've got. Yeah. So, it's like every time I go to Walmart, okay, I don't do an inventory in the fridge. Yeah. Just as simple as opening the door or, turning that system on and saying, do I need to buy this or do I not need to buy this? If I don't record a transaction where I sell something all the time, someone comes through the door and you say, oh, I should have had that on order, but because I wasn't using data to be able to actually run my business, then yes, I'm out and I've lost a potential sale. And that's the whole thing around it. It's the fact that now I'm not efficient, and if people walk through my door from a small business perspective, then effectively I can't give them what they need. Yeah? And I don't know where I am from a financial perspective and those kind of things as well. So it's vitally important that you have one system that runs everything.
In every one of these sessions, there's a light bulb moment for me. And that my light bulb moment is we are 2 weeks off from Oil Heritage Festival. And because I don't have a great system in place for my little store, we have a very modest little store. I am pretty confident in 2 weeks, I'll have people asking me for things I don't have. And I have way too many 2 and 3X t-shirts that I'll never sell. So
Right.
a system would be what would help me resolve that.
Absolutely.
And ultimately know which things are profitable, right?
Well, that's the whole idea behind the system, and it gives you data. It takes away the emotion in terms of, I feel like these should sell, but really, truthfully, they're not. These are the ones that are selling. And it's systematic evidence that says, buy these and sell these because these don't move. They're not profitable. Yeah. So just silly little
And
things.
then I can assume a really good system not only helps you manage inventory, but also helps you establish the correct pricing, your profit margins.
Absolutely, yeah. The system should include financial aspect of your business as well. Absolutely. How much I bought it for, how much I sold it for, and basically, what was the profit that I made or the loss, because it could be that you're, using a loss leader to bring in business to make, to glean in business elsewhere, right?
So I've given you some questions to look up, and I'm going to reverse the next couple because I'm excited to get to so what are the kind of disruptions that typically people find? We keep hearing this on all the local news. There are disruptions in supply chain. What are typical disruptions that any business could have? Let's talk about even as if there were no virus. What would be typical kinds?
Okay, so yeah. Yeah, let's forget about the virus for the moment, shall we?
Just for a
Okay, and let's just talk about the natural supply chain itself. We as consumers take the supply chain for granted, right? We'll order something from Amazon, we expect it the next day, or even, they'll promise you something in an hour, right? Depending on the volume of that particular product. But, typically the big disruptions that take place in the supply chain, you don't really feel, okay? Because a lot of businesses, a lot of the big businesses have, a mitigation plan in process. So for instance, natural disasters. Right. Okay. I worked with a company who make chainsaw blade. Okay. They basically predict when hurricanes are coming. Yeah. And they will up their production, and they have distribution centers at those points. Hopefully they don't get wiped out by a hurricane. But the idea is that they are actually ahead of the game because they're using the system to be able to actually help them with their supply chain. But natural disasters, they're typical in terms of if you haven't got that forethought and that forecasting ability, but also transportation failures, and delays, shipping, for instance, right? There's a 6, 12, 18 week. I'm going to mention the pandemic now, actually, because I saw a picture of the Singapore harbor, and there was 1,000 freight, great big ships, as we call them in England, right, waiting to come in, and that was a big delay. Okay, raw material scarcities. Did you ever hear of raw earth or rare metals? Okay, there was basically a shortage from China, and of course, what happened is that there was actually quite a large effect in the supply chain then. But things like quality problems. When I make something and it hasn't met the specification that I need. Price fluctuations, cyber attacks, there's a massive amount of disruptions. And all businesses have to take this into account when they're supplying. And a lot of this is there, but because as a consumer you don't see that, they are mitigating it with data. So it's important, but those are typical disruptions.
So that makes me think that if I'm a larger business or even a small business and I have a critical item, it might be worth asking my vendor or my supplier how they're managing their supply chain or their inventory, knowing that they have those kind of things in place so that they're predicting need and cost and transportation and all of those things. I hadn't really thought about that before. We tend to pick the easy, cheap vendor, but if we can't get the item we need most when we need it,
yes,
that could be a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, that's why good businesses audit their suppliers.
Yeah.
And they make sure that they have the wherewithal to supply.
So what's made COVID different? What are some of the disruptions that you've observed that are different than normal circumstances?
So if we go back to, what I talked about in terms of disruption of the supply chain, natural disasters, pandemics obviously is top of the list. And just think of it like this in terms of the world supply chain, okay? The moment that we were all locked down, people stopped buying things, okay? We weren't allowed to go out, we couldn't do anything like that. So what basically happened is the bullwhip effect of that has absolutely just magnified itself across the world supply chain. The moment someone stops, the amount of people that they possibly are supplying, and then it affects again and again and again. So it just magnified everything. And of course, you take things like toilet roll and all the essentials, masks, personal protective equipment, and those kind of things. Just one disruption, one supplier who's not able to be able to provide, everything else goes to pot. Okay. So, the pandemic, that's the difference in terms of the disruption. It was like a nuclear bomb going off in terms of stopping things from happening, and of course the whole world felt that, right? And then everybody went into disaster mode, so yeah, that's the one big difference really. I mean, because all the other ones happen all the time. Our supply chains are built to survive that, but they weren't built to survive this. And that's one of the bigger lessons from the supply chain perspective. People suddenly are now realizing just how important the supply chain is. Because we didn't
prepare you for this, but I have to ask, did you have any special insight as to why toilet paper was that a supply, that obviously it was some kind of a supply chain problem, but was it more caused by just unreasonable expectations, or was there really a serious breakdown in the supply chain?
It was a bit of both, really. I mean, everybody I always use toilet roll as the pandemic currency.
Yeah.
Okay, So, but ultimately, I've actually worked with a couple of paper manufacturers, and they do what's known as continuous production. Okay, where basically they just make this big sheet of paper, but they can turn it into whatever they want. Mm-hmm. They can turn it into printer paper. They can turn it into kitchen roll and those kind of things. Well, they were all focused in this direction in terms of printer paper and all those other good things. And then all of a sudden, everybody went and bought the whole world's toilet roll. And turning that ship, in terms of predictability, wasn't as quick and as easy as we thought it was going to be. So hence, there was a small period of time where toilet roll was worth more than gold, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. And now, I'm going to throw another question in because it looks like we're doing pretty good on time here. Have you seen, or do you believe that there is ever manipulation of supply chain to impact cost? Is that something we should be worried about as consumers or as business owners?
Wow, now that's a deep question, really, isn't it? Yeah, price fixing, basically, right? Okay, yeah, and it's not unheard of. Yeah, especially when a commodity is, sought after. People will actually get together, yes, and consortiums will be formed. And I hate to say it, but it happens.
Maybe elastic comes to mind,
Well, in England, we have governing bodies that actually audit this kind of thing. I don't know about America in terms of that, but I know that in England, there's ombudsmen who actually are, say for instance, back in the day when mobile phones first came out, all of the providers kept a high price, okay? And then the government stepped in and said, whoa, you're charging way too much for this service, you know, and brought that price down. But it happens, and it will continue to happen.
Yeah, interesting. So let's talk a little bit about, the local aspect of this. So, and I've gone a little out of order, so I'm going to go back and say, when we're looking at our supply chain, we talk a lot about China and, importing goods and that kind of thing. But there's actually opportunities for using local providers for supply chain. Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of working with local or regional suppliers? Should we be trying harder to build local supply chains, or are there downsides to that?
Well, there's both, right? There's pros and there's cons. I mean, the big the big thing here is if whatever you're producing or whatever you're using to produce, okay, from a local perspective, is it available? That's the first question that you have to ask yourselves. And obviously, if it's not, then you have to start working, with global supply chains. But from a local perspective, there are pros in terms of showing that you're investing in your local community, showing that you're serving your local community and those kind of things. It's the lead times are a lot shorter if it is available. There's always that. But on the flip side, if say for instance, even though you're local, you're paying more for the product, can you negotiate? And do you want to start hurting people's feelings in terms of, hey, you're trying to buy something from me that yes you can get elsewhere, but you want it cheaper. With the convenience factor, I guess, in that respect, okay, but then there's always the bad blood in terms of what it can produce, if I have to terminate a contract locally as well, right? So we have to weigh the pros and cons out before we make that decision, so, but there are a huge list of them.
Yeah, I know we, as chambers, we love to promote doing business local, and we tend to think about small businesses, but I often wonder if there are missed opportunities for us. But even in small businesses, we know that once you've developed a relationship with somebody, it can be really hard to change that. So sometimes we're cautious what we get into. Exactly. Well, what if my business is part of a supply chain? So, we mostly think in chamber about the end product that we're delivering goods and services. But we actually, maybe even unknowingly, are part of a supply chain. Can you talk a little bit about, how that works and what we should be thinking about if we are a cog in the wheel?
Yes, being the cog in the wheel, I mean, we're all cogs in the wheel, really, at the end of the day. But ultimately, if you're there and you know that there's going to be a disruption because, something from your business perspective has taken place, then the only true thing that you can do or be is transparent and be honest. Okay, put your hands up and say, look, we know that we're causing a disruption. We are trying our best to fix it. This is the timeline that we think that we're going to be back up and running or whatever. So it's got to be total transparency. There's no other way. Because the respect that you'll get from that is that, hey, they put their hands up. They're saying we can't get what you need. Here's the timeline. And for me, from my perspective, I will go back and do business with you again once you've got that product or that service in place again, because I know that I can trust you and we can communicate. Because in a supply chain, communication is the biggest factor. People are the heroes in the supply chain, not the product or the technology, it's the people. And you still have to work that supply chain. You still have to create relationships. You still have to maintain those relationships.
Great. Let's talk. We're doing really good on time. You've been really efficient. I think we were well prepared for these questions. So I'd like to dig in. We've had someone ask again if you can repeat the software systems that are available. And while you're welcome to repeat them as you answer this next question, we also can have you provide the names of those to Tessa, and we'll post those on our website. I am going to advance my slide here quickly and remind you all that we always post follow-up. David's made some other resources available that I'm going to be sharing out with the recording. So we'll have those there for you to take a look at. Now I've got to remember what I was going to ask about. That happens. I get distracted here. The transparency and the time and even even we organizations that provide, goods and services, I think one of the frustrations for all of us has been the unknowing. We don't know when things are going to happen. And we see a lot of complaining going on around, well, when can I get that product, or when will you open and provide me with that? So I love the whole idea of really being transparent and letting people know.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick example of how that bit us a little bit, but we have a festival coming up and we thought, well, maybe we'll save a little time and tell people what's not happening instead of what's happening and not everybody liked that approach. So it's interesting thinking about that. I remember what I wanted to ask about. So systems, when you're looking at systems, again, I kind of go to inventory and pricing, but would a really good supply chain system also include some kind of CRM, a customer relationship manager? And, what part does that play in actually managing your supply chain?
Well, it's a large part, right? Okay, because ultimately it's the customer that you want to have the relationship with. Yeah. So, a good enterprise resource planning system will have a good customer relationship management module. Okay. If you think of an ERP system as a series of modules that all link together, yeah, and they all talk to each other and they all talk back to each other. The idea behind having one system of record is that you become agile in terms of being able to react to the demand. My customer wants to change something. I put it into the system and it feeds through the whole system. Yeah, there's a lot of work in terms of setting it up, absolutely, but ultimately, once you've got that in place, then your time to insight is reduced. Okay, and that's what you want. You want to be able to take an order and get it to that customer as fast as possible by looking at how you can reduce the lead time it takes you to actually get that product out the door and to their front door, to my porch. I want it there as fast as possible. And truly the only way, and this is what small businesses should take into consideration as well, is there's three aspects that you really and truthfully need to have in place. One is people, good people. Two is good, robust processes. And three is a good system that takes every aspect of your business, financially as well as operationally, into account. Yeah. So people, process, and technology, they're the three they're not cornerstones, are they? They're the three pyramid stones of a good foundation for a business. Yeah. And if you get that right, then you're halfway there, or you're a good way there in terms of becoming more efficient.
So since so many of us, even several of us on the call, are more in the business of offering services than actual products, are there, and I kind of know the answer to this, I think I told you, I usually know the answer before I ask the question, are there good systems for managing
absolutely.
that, rather than products, actually
providing a service, providing a service, absolutely. Yeah, the same, it's principally the same. You receive an order for a service. Okay, yeah, and I want to be able to know if I've got the resources to provide that service. I want to know if I have the capabilities as well as the resources to provide that service. And you can put that into, SAP. SAP provides the exact, type of software to be able to do that. There's lots of, as I say, modules in terms of being able to use from an SAP perspective, and Oracle and all the big game players in ERP system world.
Yeah, and for full disclosure, we, one of the things that makes me understand this better is I've got really good people, they're really good systems, and we are always developing processes here at the Chamber. So we actually have a great database that's our CRM, all of everything we offer, aside from our inventory, because that's another story. So I'm a believer in really good systems. So let's use our last few minutes here to talk about, what about the really small business? So your wife, Jess, works with the Retail Association. They're a kind of nonprofit group managing services and getting things out. Many of us here are in that same kind of boat. Maybe we have little, if any, budget for actually buying a system. Can you give us any advice how we set up, how we use our people, set up systems and processes if we're really small? Can you give us even just a place to start?
Yeah, there are some very basic systems that come free with Microsoft Office. Something as simple as Excel, in terms of going in and creating an inventory sheet that says I've got X amount of these, looking at your sales and saying I've sold X amount or Y amount of these, and just doing some simple math, to try and get a grip of, hey, how have I been doing, and just add a little bit of, it cost me this much to buy them and I bought this much, so I'm looking at projected inventories, I'm looking at those kind of things. So, a good Excel spreadsheet. I always say that I go and work with some large companies that have SAP, but they actually run their businesses with Excel, because people want their own little personal information systems. They don't generally trust the data that somebody else is, because they're always second guessing. So one of the big things that I do when I go into companies is to get people to actually believe in the data, and if it's wrong, to fix it. So the only way that you can truly see if your data is accurate is to use it. Okay, and that, if you're thinking, I'm not sure this is right, doesn't matter. Use it, look at it, monitor it, make sure that you're trying to improve it all the time and make it as accurate as possible. Yeah, so that would be my starting tip.
Great suggestion. I'm just going to put something out there. It might make my staff cringe because there's always one more thing. But if anyone out there is like, oh, I'd love to talk data. I'd love to learn what is the data that my business or organization should be caring about that maybe we haven't thought of. I'd be happy to be a part of a user group, or just a brainstorming session where we actually look at in our small businesses, like what might we be missing, and how might we be able to be more efficient, more profitable, better prepared for the future if we simply identify what the data is we should be caring about. So if anybody gets as excited as I do about data management, just follow up with me, and we'll put something together that could be fun. Maybe it'll just be a tech talk for us, or maybe it'll be a future event.
I get equally excited about data as well, because it runs your business, and it takes away the emotion, and it makes life easier for you.
Well, as we head into the last couple minutes here, I'm going to throw up David's contact information. I know he's happy to follow up with any of you, but there's a great opportunity coming for everyone in the call, and I really want to encourage you to share this with somebody you know, particularly in manufacturing, because David usually works with larger manufacturers, global companies, and he has offered to work with us on an event in later July, Uncovering the Flaws of Your Supply Chain. July 23rd and July 30th, those are both Thursdays, I believe, from 9:30 to noon, free event where David will really get even a lot deeper into what supply chain management looks like. And again, where there are opportunities to save money, to be more efficient, to be better prepared for the next big crisis. So please share that. You're all welcome to log on. We'll be in the middle of festival, but I'm hoping that I can be part of some of those. Love hearing what David can teach us. So we will be working with the NWIRC. You can find the link to register on our website, or go directly to the NWIRC, look at their events and their training, and register there. Again, it's free. So we've recorded today, so you can go back and review and listen to some of the things David says. You can pass them on and share them with others. But David, I'm going to give you the last minute here to give us any finishing thoughts. Let us know if there's anything we should know as we think about the next event you're offering
us. Thanks. Well, first and foremost, thank you for inviting me. It's been real fun, actually. I've really enjoyed myself. But, I guess key takeaways in terms of a supply chain perspective is, no matter how big or small you are in terms of that, you need to understand that it's probably the most important thing in your business. You need to actually start to understand it, because whether you think of it as a supply chain or not, it's the core for everything that you do. Okay, buying and selling, simple supply chain. Buying, manufacturing, and distributing and selling is a complicated supply chain. But if you think of everything in those terms, then things will get better and easier. The mitigation plans and all that kind of stuff that we've talked about today. for half an hour. I'm doing 5 hours, I think, over the next couple of weeks. If you want to really get into the nitty gritty of it all, then please, please, please come along and you know, and let's talk details.
Yep. At a time of uncertainty, looking at your data and your supply chain actually can sometimes make you feel a little bit grounded, believe it or not. So, well, thank you, David, for joining us. Thank you, everyone. We've got another beautiful Pennsylvania day out there. So, open the doors and windows, get outside where the air is fresh and clean and healthy. And look forward to hopefully seeing you all next week. We're going to have Michelle Crowley, is President and CEO of the Carroll Chamber, joining me to talk about events. So as we head really into some event season, we want to make sure that we're compliant and safe and doing things the right way. So Michelle's going to help me explore, some of their successes and fails in events they've done. So please join us next Tuesday for, managing safe and compliant events. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.